Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2001 Silver Libertad, but we are also going to be talking about the silver and gold markets, as well as a fake Libertad that's circulating out there. Stay tuned.
Your winner by unanimous decision, and still World Heavyweight Champion of the World, the Mexican Libertad! Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Titty Hunter!
So, there's a lot of things I want to talk about today. First things first, unless you've been living under a rock, silver's on the verge of reaching all-time highs and then breakout, long-term breakout. So just before I started to record this, silver spot was nearing $41.50. It's at about 41.32 or so. It was the last quote I saw on spot. And what I have here on my screen, I'm looking at a long-term chart, and I'm not a big fan of daily charts, hourly charts, short-term charts. I always like to, when folks post charts, I like to focus in on monthly, quarterly, sometimes yearly, because the longer the time frame, the less there is for short-term fluctuations and noise to kind of interfere with the signal per se. So when you're looking at like what you're seeing here, a quarterly chart where each candlestick is represents a quarter, 3 months, this really distills a lot of the noise and lets you get a feel for the true long-term progression without getting interference from short-term movements or whatnot. So of course everyone has to say this disclaimer: this is not professional stock market advice. You should do your own due diligence. But I mean, we're looking at what's called a cup and handle. Folks that look at the technical analysis of things. So I first started investing in 2008 is kind of when I saw, this country's printing is getting out of hand. I had not anticipated that things would take this long to play out. And we'll talk about more about that shortly. I think psychologically, it's hard for people to kind of, have an investment thesis and say, this is what I'm seeing is going to play out, and other factors can interfere, prolong what one kind of predicts might happen in the future. And this time around, what I thought would happen in 2008 and how long it would take, it was not this long. This is definitely, I did not see that it would take all the way to 2025 to be on the verge of breaking out to all-time highs. But silver's almost there. So this is just one chart. I want to show you another one. A lot of people ask, well, once it breaks that 1980 high, which was pretty much 2011, we were near that high as well, what do you do? So this is a chart. Who posted this? This is on Twitter. Value Seeker is the name of the user. And this is essentially, this is something you want to look at, one of various metrics you want to look at to assess, is silver getting too pricey? Is gold getting too pricey? Should you cash out? Because I know there's a whole school of thought of like, fiat currency system, it's coming to an end. It's all over. The US dollar is going to be worthless. But it's never that day. It's not a night and day type of thing. When the British Empire was a great superpower, it didn't just completely collapse from one day to the next. The British pound didn't just get eviscerated. So what you're seeing here is the silver price adjusted for the M2 money supply. That's what this user is charting here. And this lets you get a feel for, if we adjust for the money printing, this lets us know where we are, and it lets us establish, we're down here. This is a slightly lagged. So this person charted it when the price was under $40 at $39.23. But if adjusting for M2 money supply, back in 2011 top, when we had the top, it was pretty much almost $120 the price back then if we adjust for the total money supply, M2 money supply that's out there today. And if you look all the way back to 1980, they can't even fit what the top was at the chart, but that's like $3 to $4 to $500 or so. So that this gives you a kind of a more unbiased assessment of how are we doing historically. Or is silver getting really overpriced? Where is it? So looking at this chart, looking at the money printing, silver is not even begun to just come out of the woodwork and take off. We're not even getting started, to tell you the truth. So this is one of the ways you can kind of say, okay, is this investment getting overpriced? Should I get out of it or whatnot? This is just one of many. There's others out there. I'm not going to talk about all of them now, but there is the gold silver ratio. There is the Dow gold ratio. There's a bunch of different metrics that you can use to assess, should I be in this market or should I be in the stock market? Because I mean, at some point you could say fiat is fiat, but at some point the stock market in general is cheap. And you would say, okay, I'm going to move more of what I have into the stock market, and maybe metals is not the place to be right now. But right now, eh, M2 money supply year over year, we're almost at a 5% increase. So this chart you're seeing right here is not actually static. If we come and plot this chart 1 year from now, you may have another 5%. Maybe you have 7.5% year over year into next year. So it will look the same. The chart itself will have this same structure. It's just that the values on the axis are going to be different because you're going to have more money supply. So something to keep in mind. So when I first got in 2008, I imagine, when you were looking at a chart like this back then, you were imagining that silver would maybe go to 100 and change, but times have changed. I mean, the Fed, the government has continued to kick the can year over year over year, and people have kind of like think of this park their assets into the stock market, into real estate, and I mean, you're even seeing people pile money into cards, into collectible cards, because folks are looking to protect the value of their dollars. The dollars are losing value. The more money supply going up, and folks are looking for ways to protect themselves. So here I have the 2001 Libertad, and in this video I have it sitting on top of a book. This is one of my favorite books. It's up there. It's Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. I read this book well over a decade ago, and it has some very interesting insight, a lesson that kind of I digested a long time ago, and I'm actually going to read it because it's quite enlightening, and I think I want to make a point and directly related to the Libertad market, just to highlight the behavior that's mentioned here about human nature in general. So human nature is the only constant in history. There's things in human nature that just repeat time over time. That's why you hear history does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes. So here's my favorite quote or excerpt from the book. Other people's favorite as well. There's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good content here. This one is in chapter 5, and I'm going to read it because it really strikes. It rings a bell with the Libertad market, with any market, but I'll mention how it relates directly to the Libertad market. It says, and right here, let me say one thing. After spending many years in Wall Street and after making and losing millions of dollars, I want to tell you this. It never was my thinking that made the big money for me. It always was my sitting. Got that? My sitting tight. It is no trick at all to be right on the market. You always find lots of early bulls in bull markets and early bears in bear markets. I've known many men who were right at exactly the right time and began buying and selling stocks when prices were at the very level which should show the greatest profit. And their experience invariably matched mine. That is, they made no real money out of it. Men who can both be right and sit tight are uncommon. I found it one of the hardest things to learn, but it is only after a stock operator has firmly grasped this that he can make big money. It is literally true that millions come easier to a trader after he knows how to trade than hundreds did in the days of his ignorance. So the highlight here, someone who could be right and sit tight. It is absolutely hard for someone to sit tight to say, this is what I believe is going to pan out, and I'm going to sit tight. Everyone's always antsy. They're looking to make moves. They need to see action. They need to see movement. They don't have the patience. That's what this is trying to highlight here. So that quote is relevant to pretty much any market regarding anything. And why I say, it rings a bell with what I see in the Libertad market. I started, as I mentioned, I started collecting Libertads in 2021. You see folks in social media, in Instagram, and the Facebook groups, and the PMs for sale on Reddit or whatnot. And a lot of times you'll see it's a lot of the same characters. And what's happening is, and I have a pretty decent memory and I keep track of things. They're always just buying and selling the same coins over and over again. The 98 Libertad, the 91 Type 2, the a 2018 antique, the 2019 antique, and over and over and over again. And they're just buying it and then selling it, rebuying, reselling, rebuying, reselling. And so what's happening? It's that human nature, that need that I got to make moves. I got to see movement. Dollars have to move. I just not the ability to sit tight, essentially to be patient. So if they would have just sat on their 98s back from 2021 and just done nothing, perhaps with time value of money, their opportunity cost, work more hours at their job, do something else, and just let them sit and appreciate, they would have had so much more. You start thinking about, okay, every time they're selling, every time there's buying, there's shipping involved. On the sell side, they have to pay the shipping cost, the time to package things, the time to unpackage things. All that is time just taken up. If they would have just sat the whole time and done nothing, they would have had much more. I can guarantee you that. So to wrap up that thought before we move on to the next topic, you start building out your Libertad collection. You realize, oh my God, one of my Libertads has gone up, $250. I should cash out. You probably shouldn't. You should wait around and, wait for the underlying asset, which is silver. Maybe one day silver in 5 years or whatnot is at $300, $400. Then maybe you start considering, the underlying asset class that's backing up this numismatic is pretty pricey. I don't know how much higher this will go. Then maybe you start thinking about selling. But if one of your coins goes up $50, $100, $250, I mean, unless you're going to sell it and pick up a different Libertad or a different numismatic that can appreciate so much more, that might make sense. But don't just simply for that need to make a move, to see some action, to tell a story that, hey, I flipped a Libertad, I made $150 or something. That's not really a good reason. You don't want to just let go for that reason alone. You're going to end up buying back the coin, as I've seen many, many times, at a higher price. So that's that. So let's talk about the next topic. This was brought to my attention early August is when I started hearing about it, and I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't see a need to. It seemed like it was isolated per se at the time. And then earlier this week, essentially, on one of the Facebook groups where folks are looking to buy and sell, I saw someone post a 91 Type 2 Libertad for sale. And they posted pictures, they posted video, lot of good, like it's the type of sales posts you want to see when somebody's selling something, because they're not trying to hide the defects. They're trying to show you all the defects. So everybody makes mistakes. So you got to give the seller the benefit of a doubt, because it's not typical. A lot of sellers are not going to put the video out there, but it is an expensive coin, so it's a good thing that the seller did that. But I saw it and I saw the video, I saw the pictures. I was like, oh my God, there it is. This is what folks have been talking about. And there's essentially a Type 2 1991, and it's what I'll call, it's not a completely fake. It's made out of silver, but it's not authentic. It's not an authentic 1991 Type 2. And just looking at it, the one thing that stands out, it just lacks that shine. It almost has, it's not quite there in terms of like that antique Libertad look, but it's also not that like true satin Libertad finish. No type of mirror effect in there. That's the dead giveaway on this. So this was one of the most detailed messages I found on one of the Libertad groups that's out there. There's both English language Libertad groups, and there's a lot more that seem to be densely Mexican users. So they're all in Spanish. So what you were seeing here is in Spanish because it was one of the most detailed posts, and I took away the person's name just to keep that anonymous. But essentially, what it's saying here, I'll translate for you, and I'll highlight some of the colloquialisms, the sayings that that are not standard language. So it's essentially saying the most recent example, sin raspar mueble. It's essentially like saying not trying to stir the pot, or que se acomode el saco a quien le quede, basically meaning like if the shoe fits, wear it. Is that they've been minting 91 Type 2 onzas in Guadalajara. It's basically the main city in the state of Jalisco in Mexico. So minting those recently in Guadalajara, and they got a hold of the original die. That's a little scary to hear. The onza is identical. They gave us a little lesson, if you want to call it that, on how to tell them apart. And honestly, a ojo de buen cubero, basically saying by eyeballing it, it's relatively easy. The legit onza has shine. The freshly minted onza, even though it uses the real dye, wasn't run through the polishing washing system, so it comes out without shine. It's new, but it's dull. That's why the grading companies started noticing, and they say they can't label it as a replica because it's made with the original dye. They just mark it as cleaned. I think the scariest thing about all this, the first thing that actually came to my thought is it's a 1991 coin. Why are there 1991 dies that have not been canceled? That's that scares me a bit. That's a little bit crazy. But I think everyone needs to be aware of this, and that's why I wanted to highlight this the minute it showed up this week in one of the Facebook groups for sale. I think I was a little taken aback that the admins, because I put in a comment there, I was like, you know what, I can't keep my mouth shut about this. I said, that onza looks very funny to me. That Libertad looks very funny to me. It doesn't look right. That's how I put it, because I don't want to dump all this detail out there. I said, I'll make a video about it. I'll explain it all. And after I put that, the actual high bidder on that started asking for more pictures, more videos from the seller, and the seller complied. They put more pictures, more videos. Can you blame them? They did the right thing. But was the seller cognizant or not? We don't know. You got to give them the benefit of a doubt. But I thought it was a little strange that the admin is like, oh, we're going to consider banning this buyer for bidding and retracting their bid. But honestly, based on this fact here, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I would not. I would not ban somebody because they were skeptical about a coin for good reason, for very good reason. What was also funny to me, one of the guys that was bidding toe to toe with the top bidder at the moment, they stopped the commenting on that post, so it seemed like they canceled the thing altogether for the time being. There's no line of sight or clarity into what's happening exactly, but the admin kind of stopped the commenting on there. But the other guy going toe to toe on the bidding with the highest bidder at the time, he's one of these whatnot personalities. That's basically they go into these avenues, pick up Libertads, and then you go and whatnot, and they price them above eBay comps. So it's interesting that one of these folks who should be well versed is not cognizant of this. But I think now folks are going to be a little more aware. If you're seeing type 2 Libertads raw like this, and they're missing any type of like satin, silky shine from the surfaces, you got to question the legitimacy. But what the hell is going on in Mexico that they're not canceling dyes? A 1991 coin. That's crazy. And just to close on that thought, you're going to want to keep an eye on, given that this is happening. What I have here, I went into the sub-screen varieties for on NGC's population report for the 91. So we see that the small Untha variety, the type 2, I'm over at the details column. This is where your clean coins would show up. So on the type 2, there are 32 right now that are, some of them probably potentially fall into this category. PCGS, on the other hand, I don't know. Maybe somebody could tell me in the comments or whatnot. I don't know where they put their details. I pulled up the full view, the comprehensive view. And I mean, I have some detail coins out of PCGS. And I just don't see where they would put those there. So if PCGS is marking these 91 type 2s as details, I don't know where that information is housed over here on the PCGS side. But just something, at least on the NGC side, it's something we want to keep eyes on. So unfortunately, I cannot possibly keep my eyes on all items here, but now we know we kind of have a benchmark as of right now in the summer of 2025 of there are 32 details grades on the type 2, at least the ones with where they get the variety designation. Because if you don't ask for the variety designation, the variety plus, then you get the regular label, and there's 4 of those, but we don't know if it's type 1 or type 2. Like I said in the beginning, a lot to talk about. Haven't even talked about the 2001 yet. One of the things, obviously, everyone at least a couple of times a week, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's Libertad coins in Reddit, wherever it may be, someone's posting about the 2025 Libertads. One of the latest themes out there is that, the reason Banco de Mexico is only releasing 500 coins is because, dealers did not fulfill their commitment to buy 2024s and 2025s. So I guess let's analyze that narrative carefully. So let's say that's true, because I pulled up this chart again because in 2023 and 2024, prices are hovering for the most part within the 20s range, right? So let's say a major dealer said they were going to buy, I don't know, 100,000 of them or 200,000 of them, one dealer or 2 dealers or whatnot, and then they didn't fully commit on it. I guess part of what happened is the price didn't really trend up, you could say. So it's not like it shot up $10 all in one shot. I mean, there was some movement from when there was like pre-sales to the sales, but it's not like it shot up to 40. So I mean, the funny part is, so for Banco de Mexico, the 2023 Libertads 2024, you got to figure their cost to them more or less is in the $20 range per coin. If they're really so pissed off about it, I mean, if you look at it, just very cold thought, they're up on that. If they're sitting on a bunch of inventory and they keep circulating, they post circulation figures that they're circulating, but when they're circulating coins out there, it doesn't let us know which year the Libertads they're circulating. If they still have an inventory of 2023, 2024, that's great for them. They're up on that inventory. And quite frankly, they could melt the inventory if they wanted to and get spot, and it would be a positive investment, positive return on investment. simply for the production of those coins. So to me, that narrative holds no water. It's the strangest narrative because, like, okay, it's a scarce coin. Let's melt them. That'll make because the mintage numbers on those 2 years were on the higher side per se. They were not on the truly scarce side. Uh, so heck, if I was Banco de Mexico, if that was truly the what was going on, just melt the damn coins, make them really scarce, and make a positive return on investment. Or they're probably still holding on to them, saying, "Hey, spot will go even higher." They have their own economists, they have their own folks making predictions. They may say, "Hey, we're in no hurry to unload these 2023s or 2024s. We have no problem. Price goes up to 50, goes up to 60, then we'll sell it at that price." And they make a profit. So strange narrative. It just seems like they're just pulling on threads. There's another point brought up by Bullion Cat. He made a whole post on Facebook about it. I forget which group it was in. I believe it was the Everything Libertads, or it might have been the Libertad Lovers one. And he seems to have a background in kind of like engineering, manufacturing, and understanding all the nuances of production. And he talked about ISO 9001 and what that is. I kind of have a summary here and how this would pertain to Banco de Mexico. And why it's interesting is when they initially wrote that Black Swan article about there only being 300 2025 Libertad 1 ounces MS that were going to be produced, they said there was going to be 300 initially, right? And then magically, in a couple weeks, they said, "Oh, it's 500." Well, I don't know if folks are cognizant. Banco started to make Libertads like fully in monster boxes now. In the past, they had kind of had them in rolls and bagged up the rolls, but now they started making monster boxes. So what ISO 9001 says, it requires that at every stage of the process, design, raw materials, minting, quality inspection, packaging, it has to be mapped and it has to be documented. Each step must have controls, monitoring, and traceability. What's required is evidence that the process, whenever run, produces outputs that meet specifications. This is done through documented standard operating procedures, calibration, and quality checks. So, the new process, we have the process for the 2025s. They're introducing 2025 production process, 1 ounce. If they produce mint boxes, if they do, there's 500 in those. So they'll have to do a full pilot run to validate that the process works. So Banco de Mexico, through Casa de Moneda de Mexico, which actually strikes the coins, would have to show auditors that they maintain quality records, like machine calibration logs, inspection reports, and non-conformance handling. So compliance is about showing proof of control and repeatability. So if you want to show proof that you can repeat, then you have to show proof for 500 coins. So that immediately wipes out the credibility of these folks who came out and I'm pretty sure they bought themselves into being published in the article to say there was going to be only 300 of them. They didn't even know what they were talking about. So, like I said on day one, until Banco de Mexico publishes something on their site, what the actual mintages are, nothing else is to be believed. So let's talk about the 2001. Let's bring up the mintage chart and you kind of scroll down. And 2001, in terms of scarcity of mintage, falls right around the middle. Its rank is at number 21 with 725,000 mintage. So that's where it is in terms of mintage, right in the middle of the pack. If we come over to the NGC population report, there's currently 622 2001s graded with a top pop of 70. So there's 170 out there in the highest grade. And 127 and 69. And I'll point it out every video if I have to. there's over 700,000 of them that were minted. And on the NGC side, only 622 graded. On the PCGS side, there's only 359 graded. So, given that, you can't really say, oh, the 70 or the 69 is so much rare. And it is why I always recommend, to enjoy the price appreciation, both because the numismatic is backed by silver and also because of its numismatic value of a Libertad being much rarer than other coins. Your best value for the investment is just to get one of these middle grades. Perhaps you get a 67 or a 66. And basically, you're going to save yourself some money that you could spend for another Libertad that's probably graded in the middle, or maybe you don't even want a graded one. But if you're looking for graded, I highly don't recommend. There's a lot of price fluctuations on the highest grades. The other thing I'll point out, I highlighted it during the last video on the 2000, and just to show you again, there is a 70 for 2001, and then also if you look further down here, 2004, there's also 170, and 2005, there's 370s. But back on the PCGS side, you don't have a single 70 in the 2000s, beginning even at the year 2000 until 2009 on the PCGS side. So, for the most part, and still true, I would say overall, NGC is considered the tougher grader on Mexican coins. Although when you start to, and these were not here these 70s did not exist when I first started collecting around 2021. And 2021 happened to be the same year that the company Blackstone bought up the parent company, owns NGC. It also owns CGC, which is the comic book grader, and since then people have talked about grading inflation, both on the comic side and on the coin side. So just something to keep an eye out for. Looking at the eBay sold comps, we make on the left panel, we make sure we turn on the sold completed items filters, and I have it sorted by ending recently, and you check out what the going rates are for 2001 Silver Libertad. You could play around with the string that you're going to query for what you want to search. There's a lot, as I mentioned in the past, you could type in different things here, and sometimes people don't even write Libertad. Sometimes you got to look for just Mexico, and you could find some search results. But you want to scroll through, and as I mentioned, games are being played where it seems like they're painting the tape with contrived transactions that sometimes get canceled, sometimes they don't. They stick for one reason or another. I showed you that example of that 98 Crowned Eagle where it showed sold, and that same Crowned Eagle by the same seller was posted 7 days later. Somehow that old one stayed there as sold. Just be mindful that there's going to be games sometimes. You got to be careful with the one-off. So you want to get a good sample size to gather a good range. You're not just one sale or two sales, but so 2001, you're seeing a couple of transactions here of the raw 2001, $70. There was one went for $90, $100, $80 again, $59. So you just keep scrolling through to get a general idea of what it's been going for. Here's a graded one, an MS67 on $119.95. And so just when you're looking through, especially Libertads, this is not some super rarity like a proof, one of the proof Libertads that you only have 2,000 mintage or 1,000 mintage or 500 mintage. There's 700,000 of these, over 700,000 of these. You're going to get a good sample size. So just keep an eye out on the range. And as silver price starts to go up, you're going to see these trend higher and higher.
Click that subscribe button for more data-driven coin analysis.